Inside the heart of the colossal titan, Gloria Invicta, young Marcus Vale awoke to the echoing clang of metal and the heavy vibration that shook the very air he breathed. The machine around him wasn't just a weapon, it was alive in its own way, groaning and growling like a beast preparing to hunt. The walls dripped with heat and oil, red warning lights flickering across the narrow corridors as the massive reactor began to stir. Marcus had dreamed his whole life of serving aboard one of the god machines of the Imperium, but as he pulled himself from his bunk and felt the iron floor tremble beneath his boots, that dream now felt more like a sentence than an honor. The other crew members rushed past him in silence, faces pale and eyes hollow, each lost in their own rhythm of duty and exhaustion. The scent of burning incense and machine oil filled the air as the tech priests began their morning chants to the Omnissiah, praising the ancient spirit that resided within the Titan's core. Marcus followed orders, connecting power couplings and checking pressure seals, but his mind kept drifting to the thought that this machine, this towering god of war, was somehow watching him. A deep metallic hum spread through the Titan's belly as the princeps, Lady Helena Trask, took her command throne and linked her mind to the Titan's spirit. She was the soul of Gloria Invicta, and when she spoke, even the steel seemed to listen. Power rising. All stations report. Her calm voice echoed through the Vox speakers. Marcus answered quickly, his voice trembling slightly as he read out the stable pressure levels. Around him, the servitors, half machine, half human, moved with slow robotic grace, their eyes glazed, their skin marked with data cables and augmetic scars. He could barely look at them without shivering. They were living proof of what long service to the machine could turn a person into. The ground outside rumbled as the Titan took its first step forward, each movement sending waves of force through the ship-like body. Marcus gripped a railing tightly, his heart pounding with awe and fear as the mighty Gloria Invicta rose from its resting place and marched toward the burning horizon. Through small viewing ports, Marcus caught glimpses of the world beyond, a wasteland of ash and ruin where the sun struggled to pierce the storm clouds. In the distance, enemy war machines moved like dark silhouettes, and he could hear the distant rumble of thunder, or was it gunfire? The crew inside worked in perfect coordination, adjusting valves, chanting blessings, whispering prayers to keep the Titan's spirit calm. But something in the air felt wrong. The hum of the engines grew louder, sharper, almost angry. Marcus turned to check a monitor and his stomach dropped. The reactor temperature was climbing faster than expected. He shouted the reading to his superior and the man cursed under his breath, commanding him to vent the secondary chamber. Marcus obeyed, his fingers flying across the controls as sweat rolled down his neck. The walls shook harder, and a low groan echoed from deep within the machine, almost like a roar of pain. It was the first time Marcus truly believed the Titan had a soul, and that soul was suffering. The battle outside had begun. The Titan's cannons fired, shaking everything inside. Each blast felt like a small earthquake, and Marcus was thrown against the wall more than once. Sparks flew from overhead conduits, lighting up the chamber in bursts of white and gold. Through the comm, he could hear Lady Helena whispering strange words, her voice half human, half synthetic. She was merged with the Titan's mind now, feeling its every wound and fury. "We are one," she murmured, and Marcus could almost feel the machine breathe through her. Then came the impact, an explosion so strong it felt like the world had cracked open. The lights flickered, alarms screamed, and smoke filled the lower decks. Marcus coughed and stumbled to his station, eyes watering. "Seal the conduit," someone shouted. The plasma feed had ruptured, glowing blue energy spilling from the pipes like liquid fire. Without thinking, Marcus grabbed an insulated wrench and ran toward the leak. His gloves sizzled, pain lancing up his arms, but he didn't stop. He twisted the valve shut just before the pressure reached critical. The explosion never came, but the silence that followed was almost worse. He collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily, the sound of the Titan's slow heartbeat pulsing through the deck. For hours they fought both the enemy outside and the damage within. Marcus worked until his arms ached, his lungs burned, and his mind blurred between fear and focus. When the final shots faded, and the Titan stood victorious over the smoking ruins of the battlefield, a heavy quiet settled inside. The crew looked at each other with hollow relief. Lady Helena remained in her throne, eyes closed, body trembling, still connected to the machine spirit. Marcus approached her slowly, hearing the faint hum of energy still surrounding her. She opened her eyes just long enough to whisper, "We endure." That word echoed in his mind as he helped repair what he could. When dawn finally broke through the storm, painting the Titan's armor in pale gold, Marcus climbed up to a small maintenance hatch and looked out over the horizon. The battlefield stretched endlessly, littered with smoke and dust. But amid the ruin, the Titan still stood, tall and proud, its cannons silent, yet ready. He realized then that life inside a Titan was not just about serving, it was about surviving, enduring, and becoming part of something greater than flesh and fear. The machine was cruel, the work was endless, but in that brutal existence Marcus found purpose. The Titan breathed, and so did he. The dawn after the battle painted the shattered landscape in pale gold, and inside Gloria Invicta, the crew stirred to the low, rhythmic pulse of the reactor. The Titan was alive but wounded, its machine spirit uneasy, humming with the deep growl of a creature that had tasted too much pain. Marcus Vale rubbed his tired eyes, his hands still covered in dried oil and burn marks from the night before. Every muscle ached, yet he couldn't rest. None of them could. The command came through the Vox in Lady Helena's steady but weaker voice. Maintenance teams to lower decks. The Titan must walk again before dusk. Her tone was calm, but Marcus could hear the exhaustion beneath it. She hadn't left the command throne since the battle began. It was said that once a princeps merged too long with her Titan, the bond became nearly impossible to break. Sometimes, it even consumed them. As he walked through the narrow corridors filled with flickering lights, Marcus noticed new cracks in the walls, twisted pipes and black scorch marks that told stories of how close they had come to destruction. Servitors were already repairing what they could, their mechanical arms hissing as they welded steel plates over damaged conduits. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and ozone, mixed with the faint scent of burning incense, a reminder that faith and machinery were one and the same here. When Marcus entered the main reactor chamber, he found Senior Engineer Roan performing the Rite of Awakening, chanting in binaric code as holy sparks leapt from his servo arms. "The Titan breathes. The Titan endures," the old priest muttered, his metal voice echoing against the walls. Marcus joined the other crewmen in silent prayer. Even though he was not a true believer in the machine god, he had learned that prayers were as necessary as tools down here. The reactor responded with a deep hum, its glow flickering like a beating heart. "Pressure stabilizing," someone reported, and Marcus allowed himself a small sigh of relief. But before the peace could settle, a new alarm blared through the chamber. The sound was sharp, desperate, a wailing cry that froze everyone in place. Marcus turned toward the readout screen and felt his stomach twist. One of the plasma conduits had ruptured again, this time near the Titan's leg joints. If it wasn't repaired quickly, Gloria Invicta wouldn't be able to move when the next wave of enemies arrived. Without waiting for orders, Marcus grabbed his toolkit and sprinted toward the lower maintenance access. The deeper he went, the darker and hotter it became. Steam hissed from cracked vents, and sparks rained from above like falling stars. He could hear the faint hum of the Titan's mind core pulsing behind the walls like a living heartbeat. It was strange, but he could almost feel its presence guiding him through the chaos. Crawling through a narrow service tunnel, Marcus reached the damaged section, a massive fracture where molten plasma leaked through thick cables, glowing like veins of fire. "Marcus, report," Helena's voice came through the comm, calm but laced with urgency. "Working on it," he shouted back, his voice echoing in the confined space. He could barely breathe as he tightened the seals and replaced the burned insulation plates. The metal was scorching, his gloves nearly melting, but he kept going, his hands moving on instinct and desperation. He had seen what happened to Titans that failed mid-battle, how their crews were trapped inside as the machine became a tomb of steel and smoke. He wasn't going to let that happen here. With one final turn of the wrench, the leak slowed, the glow dimming, until only the soft hum of stable energy filled the chamber. "Pressure restored," Marcus gasped into the comm. There was a pause, then Helana's quiet reply. "Good work, crewman Vale. You've saved our legs, and our lives." As he crawled back toward the main deck, Marcus felt a strange vibration under his hands. A slow, rhythmic pulse that didn't come from any machine he knew. For a moment, it almost felt like the Titan was acknowledging him. When he returned to the command chamber, the crew was busy recalibrating systems and feeding power back to the main weapons. Lady Helana still sat in her throne, cables running from her arms and spine into the glowing console around her. Her eyes flickered faintly with the same blue light as the Titan's sensors. Marcus stood silently at his post, watching her lips move in whispers too soft to hear. Then suddenly she turned her head slightly as if sensing his gaze. "Do you feel it?" she asked quietly. Marcus froze, unsure how to answer. "Feel what, my lady?" he asked. Her eyes unfocused, staring somewhere far beyond the walls. "The Titan remembers. It dreams between battles. It hungers to walk again." Her voice sent a chill through him. He had always thought of the Titan as a weapon, but now he realized it was more than that. It was a living god of metal and fire, and he was part of its pulse. By nightfall, Gloria Invicta stood ready once more. The external plating was patched, the reactor stable, and the weapons armed. Outside, the horizon burned red with the approach of another storm, and the enemy signal echoes began to appear on the Auspex screen. Marcus returned to his post, strapping himself into his harness, as the Titan's massive frame began to stir. The deck trembled, and deep below, the engines roared to life. "All systems green," Engenzir Roan reported. Lady Helana raised her head, eyes glowing brighter now. "Then we march," she said, and with that, Gloria Invicta took its first mighty step into the storm once again. Marcus felt the vibration through his bones, the weight of a god walking the earth, and he knew that the horrifying life inside the Titan was also the most extraordinary existence he could ever imagine. In the cold emptiness of the galaxy's edge, Imperial astropath Lysander sat alone in his dark chamber aboard the signal station Helios 9, his mind open to the whispers of the warp. It was supposed to be a routine shift, listening for distant psychic messages carried across the stars. But that night he felt something different. The air grew heavy, and the psychic currents began to tremble. Then it came, a soundless voice, distant yet vast, whispering through his soul like a tide of cold water. It wasn't human, nor was it like the chatter of demons or Xenos he had trained to block. It was something ancient, something hungry. He tried to shut it out, but the voice pushed back, showing flashes of dying worlds, of oceans boiling away, of mountains stripped down to dust. Every vision pulsed with the same echoing thought: consumption. When Lysander opened his eyes, he was drenched in sweat, his nose bleeding, his body trembling. He immediately sent an urgent message to Terra, warning that something immense was moving through the void. Within days, the Imperium responded. Lord Inquisitor Valen, known for his unshakable will, arrived with a small fleet to investigate. Lysander met him on the station's observation deck, the stars glimmering coldly outside the massive glass panes. "It's not just a signal," Lysander said, his voice barely steady. "It's alive." Valen studied him in silence, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his hood. The Inquisitor had seen many horrors, but something in Lysander's eyes made him uneasy. Soon a distress call came from the nearby survey ship Indomitus, which had gone to chart a nameless world at the system's edge. Their last message spoke of strange organic growths covering the planet's surface, and then nothing. Valen ordered the fleet to move in. When the ships reached orbit, the world below was dead. Every trace of life, plants, animals, even bacteria, was gone. Scans showed only a vast layer of organic residue covering the planet like skin. Landing teams found fossilized bones drained of marrow, forests turned to ash, and oceans evaporated. It was as if something had eaten the planet itself. Lysander could still hear the faint hum of the psychic voice in his mind, now stronger than before. It was calling to him, showing him images of creatures with razor limbs and endless hunger, each one connected to a greater mind beyond understanding. "They are coming," he whispered to himself. but the others dismissed it as exhaustion. That night, as the fleet orbited the silent world, a shape appeared beyond the system's rim. Something vast, moving without engine signature, gliding like a shadow against the stars. At first, sensors failed to identify it. Then the machine spirits screamed warnings. The readings were biological. The object wasn't a ship, it was alive. Valen ordered full battle alert. The fleet's lights turned crimson as weapons powered up, and Lysander stood at the viewing port, watching the massive silhouette approach. It looked like a monstrous leviathan of flesh and bone, bristling with spines and pulsing sacs. Tendrils of living matter reached toward the planet, releasing clouds of smaller creatures that glowed faintly in the void. One by one, the ship's auspex readings vanished. Communications began to fail. The psychic pressure in Lysander's head became unbearable. He fell to his knees, gripping his skull, hearing millions of alien thoughts moving as one. The voice no longer whispered, it roared. He saw through their eyes for a heartbeat, glimpsing the truth of the swarm. The Tyranids. Not invaders of a single world, but harvesters of galaxies. They devoured to live, to grow, to become more. Each planet was food, each species merely fuel for the endless hive. Lysander screamed as the vision faded, and the sound of alarms filled the station. The first of the smaller Tyranid spores were breaching the outer perimeter, slamming into hulls, spilling horrors that clawed through metal and flesh alike. Valen ordered a retreat, but the fleet was already surrounded. Bioships unfolded like monstrous flowers, spitting acid and bone shards that tore through Imperial armor. Through the chaos, Lysander forced himself to the communication console, sending one final message across the warp. "They are awake," he transmitted, his voice shaking. "They are not chaos. They are not demons. They are something else entirely. Tell Terra, the hive is moving." The message was cut off as a burst of psychic static ripped through the chamber, shattering the glass around him. Outside, the stars themselves seemed to dim as the Tyranid fleet closed in. In that last moment before the swarm consumed the station, Lysander looked into the void and felt the weight of its terrible beauty. The hive mind saw him, recognized him, and then there was only silence. The galaxy, vast and cold, had just met its oldest predator. Deep within the orbiting wreckage of what was once the Imperial fleet, silence reigned, until the silence began to move. The remains of ships, once gleaming with the pride of the Imperium, now drifted in a sea of darkness where strange lights pulsed within the void. These lights were not artificial, they were alive, glowing with the rhythm of alien hearts. Far below, the dead planet began to stir. From the soil itself, shapes began to grow, tendrils of flesh twisting together, birthing creatures that crawled, hissed, and took form. It was as if the very world was rebuilding itself in the image of its devourers. These were the Tyranids, rising again from the residue of what they had consumed. On the command bridge of the Glory of Sol, Captain Ardent watched in disbelief. His ship had survived the first assault by sheer luck, drifting beyond the swarm's main feeding zone. He had lost half his crew, and the rest were shaken, their faces pale under the flickering light of failing consoles. Yet Ardent refused to retreat. Something about this enemy felt different, too coordinated, too purposeful. "They're not just feeding," he muttered, staring at the endless motion on the planet below. "They're building something." The ship's Mechanicus Magos, a hooded figure of metal and data, reported strange readings coming from the void, psychic frequencies beyond known patterns. Ardent's instincts told him this was not random behavior. Somewhere out there, a mind was directing them all. He ordered a forbidden experiment, a psychic probe, a device designed to pierce the warp and capture echoes of alien thought. The crew hesitated. Such technology was unstable and banned by Imperial law, but Ardent's voice carried the force of command. "If we don't understand them," he said, "we'll never stop them." The probe activated with a hum that seemed to vibrate through the bones of every living soul aboard. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the entire ship trembled, as if the void itself had answered. Lysander's final message had warned of a living hive, and now Ardent felt it, an invisible presence brushing against his thoughts. The crew cried out as images flooded their minds. Galaxies stripped bare, star systems swallowed whole, oceans of biomass flowing into enormous creatures drifting through space. The horror of it was almost too vast to comprehend. The Tyranids were not merely attackers, they were survivors of another war. Refugees fleeing something far worse. The probe's sensors spiked, detecting faint echoes beyond the known galaxy, traces of destruction that even the hive mind seemed to fear. Then, suddenly, the link broke. The psychic feedback slammed through the ship, knocking out power and killing several crew members instantly. Ardent staggered, his head ringing with echoes of alien thought. "They're running," he whispered, stunned. But from what? The Magos, clutching a smoking console, stared at the readouts with trembling hands. "Captain, these readings, they show something vast beyond the galactic rim. Something even they avoid." Ardent looked at the stars, now flickering with the light of 1,000 moving shadows. The hive was shifting. Below, the planet's surface writhed as the bioforms completed their transformation, sprouting wings and spines. They were preparing to leave, launching into the void to rejoin their fleet. "They're gathering," Ardent said grimly. "Every piece of them, every world they've consumed, it's all connected." He knew then that the Imperium's wars were nothing compared to what was coming. If the Tyranids were fleeing from something, then humanity was standing directly in its path. Suddenly, alarms blared again. A massive bioship was turning toward the glory of Sol, its vast form blocking the light of distant stars. Its organic surface rippled like muscle, and clusters of eyes along its hull began to glow. "Helm! Evasive maneuvers!" Ardent shouted, but it was too late. A storm of living projectiles rained toward them, searing through void shields and tearing through armor. The ship groaned as fire erupted across the decks. Amid the chaos, the psychic presence returned, not hostile this time, but curious. Ardent felt it in his mind, a sensation of being observed by something immense and ancient. It wasn't emotion he sensed, but recognition. The hive mind was studying him. He gasped as a single wordless thought pierced his mind. Adaptation. The ship jolted again, flames spreading, but Ardent did not move. Through the chaos, he understood what that word meant. The Tyranids were learning, changing with every encounter. They were not only consuming matter, but knowledge, strength, experience. Every human battle, every weapon fired at them, was being absorbed into their evolution. The glory of Sol began to break apart, its decks splitting under pressure. "We can't kill them," Ardent whispered, watching the swarm advance. "Every time we fight, we only make them stronger." As the evacuation alarm screamed, the captain turned to his officers, his resolve hardening. "Send word to Terra," he said. "Tell them the hive isn't just a threat, it's a warning." The Magos hesitated. "What should I call the message?" Ardent looked at the growing shadow filling the stars and spoke quietly, his voice trembling with awe. "Call it the awakening of the hive."